"You don't need to come, Dad. Jenna's parents will be here and, well, there just isn't enough room." Those words came from my own son, Michael, over the phone one chilly November afternoon. I stood in my small kitchen in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, staring at the steam rising off the cup of black coffee in my hand. The same son I had raised, fed, clothed, and bailed out more times than I could count, had just told me, flat out, that I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving in his house. Jenna's parents, though? Oh, they were welcome. They always were. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe. And tell us where you're watching from. I didn't argue with Michael right then. I just listened, numb, as he rattled off some excuse about space, about how Jenna's folks are driving in from Madison, and you know how it is. "Dad, we can't host everybody." The truth was clear. It wasn't about space. It was about pride. Jenna never liked me. She made that obvious from the first time she came to my house, wrinkling her nose at the old recliner where I sat to watch football, commenting on the outdated kitchen cabinets I'd built with my own two hands. But I had swallowed my pride for years, because Michael loved her. I kept helping him too, loaning him money for his down payment, co-signing his mortgage, even covering a missed payment or two when Jenna's boutique went under. And now, with turkey on the table and pie in the oven, I wasn't invited to sit at that table. Let me back up. My name's Richard Lawson. I spent 32 years working at a paper mill along the Cedar River. My wife, Linda, and I raised Michael in a modest 3-bedroom ranch on the south side of town. We weren't wealthy, but every nail I drove into that house, every hour of overtime I pulled at the mill, was for him. Linda passed 6 years ago. Lung cancer took her in the fall of 2017. After that, it was just me and Michael. I thought losing her would bring us closer. Instead, the opposite happened. Michael met Jenna and everything shifted. She was polished, ambitious, always looking over her shoulder at what other people had. Her parents had money. They drove a Lexus, belonged to the country club in Madison, wore sweaters draped over their shoulders like they'd stepped out of a magazine ad. Compared to them, I was just a mill worker with calloused hands and a rusted-out Ford pickup. Still, I did what fathers do. I supported him. I helped him buy that big colonial-style house on Maplewood Drive, the one Jenna bragged about on Instagram, with the caption, "Dreams come true." What she didn't say was that the dream came true because her husband's old man put his name on the line for them. So there I was, standing in my kitchen, holding the phone, hearing my son tell me I wasn't welcome in the very house I helped him secure. "Dad," Michael said, clearing his throat, "don't take it personally. It's just easier this way. You can come by another time, maybe Sunday." Another time. Sunday. Leftovers. I bit down hard on my tongue to stop myself from saying what I wanted to. Instead, I let the silence stretch until he grew uncomfortable. Finally, I said, "All right, son, you do what you think is best." And I hung up. But my heart didn't hang up. It beat hard in my chest, filled with something between grief and anger. I stared at the stack of papers sitting on the counter. Letters from the bank. Mortgage statements with my name still listed as co-signer. Michael and Jenna thought they owned that house. But technically, legally, the truth was more complicated. I sat down at the kitchen table, the old wood creaking under my weight, and I felt the first spark of something I hadn't felt in a long while. Resolve. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider in my own family, then maybe it was time they learned who really held the cards in this small-town game. And let me tell you, Thanksgiving wasn't the only surprise they'd be getting this year. When Thursday rolled around, I drove past Michael's house just to see it lit up. Maplewood Drive was lined with cars, the kind you see in dealership commercials, BMWs, Lexuses, SUVs so shiny you could see your breath in the reflection. I parked down the street and just sat there in my old Ford, engine humming low, watching shadows move across the windows of the house I'd helped buy. Through the big bay window, I saw Michael laughing at the head of the table, carving turkey with the knife I'd given him as a wedding gift. Jenna sat at his side, topping off her mother's wine glass like the perfect hostess. The table was full, overflowing with food, with warmth, with people, everyone but me. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes, what it looked like when your son decided he'd rather you eat alone while strangers filled your chair. I drove away before the sting in my eyes turned into something worse. The streets were quiet, lined with bare trees rattling in the wind. I stopped at a diner off 16th Avenue, Rosie's place, the one where the waitresses still called you Hon, and the pies sat under glass domes at the counter. Rosie herself came over with a smile, her hair pulled back tight and her apron dusted with flour. "Happy Thanksgiving, Richard," she said softly, setting down a slice of pumpkin pie without me asking. She knew. She always knew. "Thanks, Rosie," I muttered, my voice rough. "Guess I'll be celebrating here this year." Her eyes flicked toward the window, where my truck sat under the buzzing street lamp. "Some families don't know what they got until it's gone," she said. Then she walked away, leaving me with pie, black coffee, and a pit in my chest. But while I sat there, fork idle in my hand, something kept running through my head. Those mortgage statements, those late payments. The truth was, Michael wasn't as secure as he thought. He and Jenna were 3 months behind. And if they missed one more, the bank would come calling. On me. That house wasn't just theirs. My name was still tied to it. And I was tired of carrying the weight for people who couldn't even pull up a chair for me at Thanksgiving. The next morning, I pulled out every piece of paperwork I had. The mortgage note, the co-signer agreement, even the copies of checks I'd written when they'd forgotten to pay. I spread them out across my kitchen table like a map of betrayal. Then I called an old friend. "Lawson," came the gravelly voice on the other end. It was Tom Hendricks, a lawyer I'd worked with years ago when settling Linda's estate. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything all right?" "Not really, Tom," I said, steady as I could. "I've got a situation with my boy. He thinks that house on Maplewood is his and his alone. But my name's still on that mortgage, and he's about to drown us both in debt." Tom sighed. "I see where this is going. You want to protect yourself before the bank comes for you?" "More than that," I said, my jaw tight. "I want to send a message." A week later, I walked into the Lynn County Courthouse with Tom by my side. The clerk stamped papers, the echo sharp in that marble hall. By the time I walked out, the ball was already rolling. Foreclosure proceedings don't happen overnight, but when you're 3 months behind, the clock ticks fast. Word got out quicker than I expected. Cedar Rapids is a small town. People talk. By Saturday, I was at Casey's General Store grabbing a coffee when a neighbor leaned in. "Richard," he whispered, "heard there's trouble with your boy's house. That true?" I didn't answer, just sipped my coffee and let him stew in the silence. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, or the lack of it. And sometimes, in a place like Cedar Rapids, respect means more than a checkbook. The following Sunday, Michael finally called. His voice was sharp, panicked. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" "Jenna's freaking out. We got a notice from the court about foreclosure. It's got your name on it." I leaned back in my chair, the phone pressed to my ear. "That's right, son. My name's on the line. Same as it's been since the day you signed those papers. You didn't think skipping payments was just your problem, did you?" He sputtered, angry. "You can't do this to us. Jenna's parents are here. They saw the letter. Do you have any idea how this looks?" I smiled to myself, though he couldn't see it. "Yeah, Michael, I think I do." And that was the first time in a long time I felt a sliver of power return to me. Because Thanksgiving might have been theirs. But Christmas, Christmas was going to be mine. Michael showed up on my porch 2 days later, unannounced. It was a gray morning in Cedar Rapids, the kind where the sky looked heavy enough to fall. I opened the door, and there he was, red in the face, fists balled at his sides, Jenna sitting stiff in the passenger seat of their SUV behind him. "You've lost it, Dad," he spat, before I could say a word. "Do you know what you're doing? You're going to ruin me." I leaned against the doorframe, calm as a man who'd already made up his mind. "I'm not ruining you, son. You did that yourself when you stopped paying your bills. You could have just helped," he shouted, his voice echoing down the quiet street. "You've got savings, you've got the house, but instead, you'd rather watch your own family burn?" Something inside me snapped at that. I stepped forward, closing the space between us. "Don't talk to me about family, Michael. You shut me out of yours the second you decided I wasn't welcome at your table. You made your choice, now you live with it." His jaw clenched, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. "Jenna's parents think I'm a failure now. Do you get that? They think I can't provide for her. You've humiliated me." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Son, you did that when you borrowed money you couldn't pay back, when you signed papers you didn't understand. All I did was stop covering for you." For a moment, he just stood there, chest heaving, his breath white in the cold air. Then he jabbed a finger toward me. "You'll regret this. You'll regret turning your back on me." And with that, he stormed off, slamming the SUV door so hard the sound echoed like a gunshot. Later that day, I drove downtown to meet with Tom Hendricks again. His office smelled of old books and strong coffee, the kind of place where bad news got softened by leather chairs. Tom slid a folder across the desk. "The foreclosure's moving faster than I expected. They're already scheduling a court date after the new year." I nodded, flipping through the papers. Each page was another nail in the coffin Michael had built for himself. "Good. Let him sweat through the holidays." Tom raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to play it this way, Richard? Foreclosure isn't just a slap on the wrist. He could lose everything." I looked him dead in the eye. "That's the point. The gossip spread through town like wildfire. At Hy-Vee, at the diner, even at church. I could feel eyes on me. Whispers floated just loud enough for me to catch. Richard's son's in trouble. Foreclosure on Maplewood. Can you believe it? One evening at Rosie's place, an old friend named Hank slid into the booth across from me. He worked over at the plant with me years ago, back when life was simpler. "Word is, your boy's begging around for a loan," Hank said, stirring his coffee. "Went to Jenna's folks, even to the credit union. Nobody's biting. Looks like he's out of options." I sipped my coffee slowly. "He'll learn, Hank. Sometimes the only way a man grows is when he's got nothing left to lean on." Hank studied me for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "You always were tougher than the rest of us." That night, lying in bed, I thought back to Linda. If she'd been here, she might have told me to go easy, to forgive. But forgiveness only works when someone's sorry. And Michael wasn't sorry. He was angry at being caught. So, no, I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, just before Christmas, another letter went out. This one wasn't just a notice. It was a summons. Michael called me again, his voice shaking. "Dad, they're taking us to court." Jenna says her parents might pull out of helping us with the baby's college fund. "You're destroying my family." I closed my eyes, let his words hang in the silence. Then I said, calm and steady, "No, Michael, I'm saving mine. You forgot I was part of it." And before he could yell again, I hung up. Because the truth was, the stage was set. And soon, in a courtroom full of people, everyone would see Michael for what he really was. And me, I'd finally reclaim my dignity. The courthouse in Cedar Rapids was buzzing the morning of the hearing. The old brick building loomed against the cloudy sky, its steps worn smooth from years of footsteps, weddings, divorces, bankruptcies, and every other messy chapter of small-town life. I'd walked those steps once before, back when Linda and I signed the papers for our first house. Back then, it was a place of beginnings. Now, it was where something ended. Inside, the courtroom smelled faintly of dust and old wood polish. The benches creaked as people settled in. Curious neighbors mixed with strangers called for other cases. But I noticed a few familiar faces. Folks from church, a couple of men from the plant, even Mrs. Grant from down the street. Word had gotten around, and people came to see the fall of Michael Harris. Michael sat at the defendant's table, his suit wrinkled, his tie crooked. He looked like a boy playing dress-up. Jenna was beside him, her face pale, lips pursed like she'd swallowed a lemon. Across the aisle, I sat quietly with Tom Hendricks, who had a stack of documents neat as a soldier's bed. When the judge entered, the bailiff called for silence. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. The bank's lawyer presented the case first, outlining the missed payments, the bounced checks, the ignored notices. Each word landed like a hammer. Michael squirmed, whispering to Jenna, but she only stared forward, stiff as a board. Then Tom stood. His voice was calm, steady, like the man I used to be before life knocked me around. Your Honor, this case isn't just about unpaid bills. It's about deception. My client's son attempted to forge his father's signature to stall foreclosure, to keep up the appearance of solvency while digging the hole deeper. We have handwriting analysis to prove it, along with testimony from the notary who refused to certify the document. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My head tilted just slightly toward Michael, his face drained of color. The judge frowned, adjusting his glasses. Mr. Harris, did you attempt to falsify your father's signature? Michael stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I just thought it was the only way. I didn't mean... But the judge cut him off, sharp as a knife. Forgery is not a mistake. It's fraud, and it carries consequences. At that moment, the entire room seemed to lean in. Even Jenna's eyes widened, her perfect facade cracking. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. For years, I'd carried his lies on my back, his debts on my shoulders. But today, his sins were laid bare for the world to see. During recess, Michael cornered me in the hallway. His voice was low, desperate. Dad, please, you can tell the judge you don't want to press it further. They'll listen to you. Just don't let them take the house. I studied him, my own son, trembling like a child. And for the briefest second, my heart wavered. I remembered holding him as a boy, teaching him to ride his bike down Maplewood Lane, the way he laughed when he finally got the hang of it. But then I remembered the Thanksgiving table, his words, cold and final. You're not welcome here anymore, Dad. I leaned close and whispered, so only he could hear. You made your choice, Michael. Now you live with it. His eyes filled with tears, but I turned and walked back into the courtroom. When the judge gave the ruling, it was swift and merciless. The foreclosure stood. Michael and Jenna had 30 days to vacate the property. The attempt at forgery would be referred to the county prosecutor. The gavel fell like thunder. Michael's shoulders collapsed. Jenna stared at him as though seeing him for the first time. The courtroom buzzed, whispers growing into murmurs. I sat still, breathing evenly, the weight of years lifting off me. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. But I knew this wasn't the end. The real reckoning was still waiting. When the house would be taken, when the movers would come, when the neighbors would watch them pack their lives into boxes. That would be the moment of true justice, and I intended to be there. 30 days passed quicker than I thought. The autumn leaves in Cedar Rapids turned from gold to brittle brown, and before long, the first hint of frost clung to the windows. Michael and Jenna's house, the one I had co-signed for, the one I once thought would carry their family into a brighter future, was now a shell of broken promises. I drove past it one morning, just to see. The yard, once neatly trimmed, was littered with half-packed boxes and discarded furniture. A foreclosure notice was taped to the front door in bold red letters. Neighbors stood at the end of their driveways, whispering the way small towns do. Word spread fast here, and Michael's fall from grace had become the talk of every diner and barber shop. That Saturday, I went to the house, not to gloat, though some part of me wanted to, but to face the end of this chapter. When I pulled up, Jenna was dragging a suitcase down the steps, her face hard and cold. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Inside, Michael was sitting on the floor of the empty living room, staring at the carpet as if it might swallow him whole. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, his suit long traded for sweatpants and a faded college hoodie. He didn't speak at first, just sat there, surrounded by echoes of the life he'd thought was his to keep. Finally, his voice cracked through the silence. "Dad, I don't know what to do now." I studied him, this man who was my son, and for a moment, my heart ached. I thought of Linda, how she would have wanted me to show him kindness, to guide him even now. But I also thought of the sting of betrayal, the words that had cut me open at Thanksgiving. "You'll figure it out," I said, my tone calm but firm. "Maybe it's time you stop expecting everyone else to clean up after your mistakes." He looked up at me, tears brimming, but I didn't flinch. He had to feel the weight of his choices. That was the only way he'd ever change. As I walked out, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. This wasn't the ending I once imagined for my family, but it was the justice that life had carved out. Neighbors stopped me on the sidewalk. Old Mrs. Grant shook her head, muttering, "Never thought I'd see the day." One of the guys from the plant clapped me on the shoulder, whispering, "Took guts to do what you did. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." For years, I'd been the quiet man in the background, the one holding everything together while everyone else took advantage. But now, people saw me for what I was, a man who finally stood up, even against his own flesh and blood. That night, back in my small house, I sat with a cup of coffee at the kitchen table. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Through the window, I could see the moon hanging over the Iowa fields, pale and steady. I whispered into the stillness, half to Linda, half to myself. I did what I had to. Maybe now I can finally rest. Justice wasn't about money or houses. It was about dignity, and I had taken mine back. So if you've listened this far, let me leave you with this. Sometimes, family betrays you in ways you never thought possible. But betrayal doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do after, whether you crumble under it or stand tall. Michael and Jenna lost the house, the respect of their neighbors, and the safety net they thought would always be there. I lost the illusion of being needed, but I gained something more important: peace. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. The villains may think they've won in the moment, but life has a way of setting the scales right, and when it does, oh, it's sweeter than you can imagine.